And we are live. Hi, everybody. Welcome to a special Google Hangout that we're doing tonight with Gina Prince-Bythewood, who is the writer and director of Beyond the Lights, the wonderfully, beautifully made love story that stars Gugu Mbitha Raw and
Mbata,
Nate Parker. Say that one more time.
Mbata Raw.
Mbitha Raw. Got it. Well, she is phenomenal. She is fantastic. And also Nate Parker. And I am so delighted to be here. And I also have joining me Ade. And Ade, I am not even going to try.
And I know exactly what you mean. That's okay.
How do I say it?
It's Annie Fowoshe.
Annie Fowoshe.
There you go. That's pretty good for the first time.
Yeah, my mom was an English teacher. I can pronounce the words. So, whose Blog Talk radio show is
Life Conversations radio show.
Yes, there you go. And then I also have Shakira Taylor, who is the one half of the partnership for Hip Coaches.
Correct.
I got that right.
You got that right.
Got Wonderful. So I'm really just looking forward to this discussion to really dig into some things that I saw in Beyond the Lights that I thought were just really worthwhile conversations to be had. So this is going to be really very much a roundtable. And if you're watching on YouTube, you'll be able to type your questions in. If you're on the Google Hangout, type your questions in, and we'll be able to see them. But we want to hear from you, and we want to talk about just how wonderful and how powerful this film is. And I guess I'll start just kind of throwing a question to you, Gina, is about this film and what really inspired you to make the film. And I know you probably have answered this question a billion times. But for the purposes of this conversation, could you tell us one more time what inspired you to make this film?
Mm-hmm. Well, it was really a couple things. Foremost, I wanted to do another love story. It had been 14 years since Love and Basketball, and I was eager to get back into that. There certainly is not enough love stories being made, especially with people of color, and I just wanted to put that out into the world. And the other thing was some personal things that I was going through, and one of the big ones was this notion of choose life. That was someone very close to me had tried to commit suicide, and thankfully changed their mind halfway through and were able to get help. But I needed to understand it and tried to help, and in doing that did a lot of research and was fascinated to find that evidence shows that at least half the people who do commit suicide tried to change their minds. So that was a really powerful thing for me to hear, and just knowing how this person is now and how much better they are and that they have a full life. It was just something really important, again, that choose life that I wanted to put out into the world. So it was really those two things were driving me. And again, also, I love movies. I love music, and wanted to deal with that as well. I love hip-hop and R&B. It's the music I listen to, but I don't love where it's been going the last couple of years. I think it's going in a very dangerous place with the hypersexuality and the competition that artists seem to be in to push the envelope, and it's trickling down to our young people. Not just our young people, actually, but anyone who listens to it, just believing that that is what you need to portray, to be attractive, to be desirable, and both for men and for women. So really wanted to hope this film could change the conversation.
Thank you for that. One of the things that really touched me, I think that stood out immediately, was the quote that he says to her, which is, "Truth is the only safe ground that you can stand on." Mm-hmm. And is that a personal mantra that you use? But that was like probably one of the most immediate things that touched me about the film.
Absolutely. "Truth is the only safe ground to stand upon" is a quote that I've had in my my quote list. Quotes are very important to me. They give me structure, and they just help. I mean, they inspire me. So that was one that I always loved, and I thought it was really important for this character Kaz to have that as his mantra. He's a guy who is a man with integrity, who does not lie, and he's pulled into a world that lives on a moral ambiguity and lies and and people living inauthentically. I thought it was an interesting dynamic to play with Noni, her character, from a young age being taught who she is not good enough and that she needs to cover and become something else. So she's lived a lie her whole life, whereas Kaz is a man who's been taught not to do that. So I love the influence that he had on her and could have on her as well. And again, the truth is she cannot be set free until she tells the truth, and that was really a driving force. And not just that, she couldn't love fully until she told the truth, because once she told the truth, she's being honest about who she was. And from there, you can't love yourself unless you know yourself. So she had to come to that truth before she could love herself and then love Kaz.
I love that. I love that. I want to open this up to you guys. Definitely jump in, Ade and Shakira, with any questions that you have on that. But just in terms of the what I loved about it, and one of the things that we talk about, I guess, in my spiritual community, is what it means to be completely unauthentically yourself. Mm-hmm. And pretty much every sermon, every lesson, every class is focused on how do you get back to that authentic self. Now, we use the term the Christ as a way to explain this inner perfection that we see as the truth of who we are. And so when I heard that, it was like, bells, the bells and whistles went off for me. It was like, hey. And it made me wonder, were there spiritual influences for you for this film, or is this more just kind of your own personal ethic?
Mm-hmm. I think it's both. It's definitely my own personal ethic. It's very important to live with integrity, especially in Hollywood. They will try and pull you away from that, but it's all you have to hang on to. You cannot control other people's behavior, but you control your own. And one of the most important things is to maintain your integrity. So it's definitely a fight, but one that's worth fighting for. It's definitely important to Reggie, my husband, as well, to live an authentic life. And again, Hollywood, I think, is kind of the antithesis of that. Everyone is hiding. Everyone is trying to be someone else, and it's tough. But again, it was so important for me and this film to just show or really inspire people to be brave enough to live an authentic life.
How has this film taught you to live that mantra even more?
Mm-hmm. Wow. I think I came to that, the authenticity. I think I came to it a couple years ago, and what was great about doing this film is allowing me to put what I've learned out into the world. I mean, it was very tough for me growing up in high school. As I've said, I was adopted by white parents, and great people gave me a life, but they didn't understand that, raising me in an all-white area and going to all-white schools, how damaging that could be. And I really grew up with very low self-esteem because no one looked like me, and all the racism and cruelty that I had to deal with. I had no way to fight because I had no one teaching me how to fight. So I really struggled with my sense of self-worth growing up, and it wasn't until just finding my birth mother, doing that search, understanding that the life I had, despite the issues, was 1,000 times better than what it would have been if I was raised by her, and just understanding and learning to be happy with myself.
Mm-hmm. 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 Awesome. And just so you guys know, a couple of you, if there's noise or whatever, I'll mute you, just so that there's not any interference. And then, of course, if you want to ask a question, just unmute yourself. I appreciate that. I was thinking about some of the things that you've shared over the last couple of days. We've been talking about the film and just the struggles of getting this film out and what it has meant to sort of, live that truth. And if I can offer this, just kind of my, having witnessed just a little bit, I certainly was not there in the beginning or even in the middle. I'm really here on this end little slice coming in and just trying to share some love because I care about the two of you. But I really felt like that that there's a way that you are living that mantra now with fighting for this film, and with standing on the truth that this is a great film and people deserve to see a love relationship between two people of color that's healthy, that's not a bunch of screaming and shouting, folks aren't throwing tables and chairs, and and they're not saving each other. There's this beautiful line that I feel like you walk where they advocate for one another, they fight for one another, but they don't, they love each other enough to let you pick yourself up.
Absolutely. Yeah, what's important for me, there's been a lot of talk, obviously, of the box office. The thing is, the movie hasn't failed. I'm so proud of the movie. It's a movie I wanted to make, and the effect it's having on the audiences that have seen it. That's what you want as an artist, to be able to inspire and change people. So I know the film is working. My disappointment is that there aren't more of us that are going in to receive the message, and that is really why we're fighting because I know the film will have a long life, and you have pay TV and DVD, and but it's a film that I feel is a experience, and it's best shared, and I want people to have that movie experience in a theater. It's a love story and a music film, and you should experience it on the big screen, surrounded by a crowd. That collective experience of everyone reacting the same way to the airplane scene, and the scene where she takes out her weave. Like, I love being in the theater and seeing and hearing the audience as a collective experience that together, and that's what I really want people to get out of this film, and why I feel they should go to the theater now as opposed to waiting to DVD.
Sure. Ade, Shakira, let me kind of put it in your hands right now. Any questions that you have, or let me ask you, what was your reaction? Because I think I know you tweeted me, or you said something after you and Charles had a chance to see the film.
Absolutely. For us, it's been a couple days now, and we're still discussing the movie. Let me put it that way. We're still talking about it. And we went to dinner with another couple yesterday, and after leaving them, they went to see it last night. And so we're still talking about it again. And the conversation lives on. But for me, I'm still watching. I have to say, I'm still watching Love and Basketball. Once it comes on, I'm watching it. That's like one of my all-time. Wow. But for me, the movie was so well written, and it wasn't just about Noni. It was really all the dynamics of the relationships with her mom. There were so many relationships and things that we could pick from and we could find. I had friends in Canada who said she could resonate so much with what was happening in the film. So I'm still digesting it. I'm still coming out of it. But for me, it was the finding the truth. It was the courage, the transformation from the opening to the end, and it wasn't just Noni. For me, I saw the transformation in her mom. I saw the transformation right through, and it's just beautiful. It's beautiful.
Wow, I love it. Thank you. That is a tremendous. The fact that you're talking about it, that is the best compliment that you could give. That means a lot, and I love that you're still watching Love and Basketball, and I hope 14 years later people are still watching Beyond the Lights.
Oh yeah, I think so. It's good conversation. It's one of those things. It's good conversation from top to bottom, and that's what I liked about it, from the opening to the end. And the movie ended, and we sat there. We just sat. My Charles and I, we just sat there in silence, and we're like, okay, what happened? And for him, that wouldn't be a movie that he would go to. But I say, come on, you got to go see this. And now he's talking about it and sending people to go see it, but it's not the typical man movie. But it was so powerful that it can be appreciated and shared and talked about and be that conversation piece around the table. So it's great.
No, I love that, and I love that he came and was able to appreciate it as well. It's my hope. I know on the surface, because of the poster, honestly, it looks like a typical chick flick, which I But, for me, and what was important for me to do with Love and Basketball, and certainly for this as well, is that it's not about a woman and a guy comes into her life and that's it. I want both the male and female character to have full arcs and stories and characters, and I just think it makes a story and love story more interesting when you're following two as opposed to, a hanger-on to someone's life. So I've been loving the response of men, especially black men, to Kaz's character, because it's frightening how rare it is to see a man like Kaz, on screen. And I know for me how important it is to see myself reflected in a positive light. And I think it's so important for our men and boys as well to be able to see that.
Absolutely. A big part of the story with Kaz at the end, when he somewhat got permission from his dad in the end, that was so powerful. And Charles and I kept talking about it because men on a whole, at some point, they seek that permission from their dad or the male figure to move away. So that lent itself to a whole other conversation that we got into. So there's so many pieces of the movie that you could just sit and you could be on it for a while. And we're planning on talking about this on our blog talk show on Tuesday to continue the conversation, because there's pieces of it that we can pull out, and it just works. Well written.
Thank you.
Well written.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ade, I want to turn it over to you because I have a question about the art and the value of seeing ourselves on the screen, but I'm going to put it in your hands.
Wow. The interesting thing about it for me was I saw the trailer many months ago, and I thought, oh, that looks like something I would like to see. But for the most part, there's a lot of movies that I see, oh, I'm going to see that, but I get so busy that I forget when they come out. And thankfully to you, Sherry, you brought it back to my awareness, and I said, I'm definitely going to see this weekend, which I did last night. And for me, one of the things that it reflected the human experience
Correct.
that all of us must have to go through. I love the fact that Kaz had a goal. He had a focus for his life. And Noni did as well, even though her mother was pushing her. And Kaz wasn't trying to conquer her. He was doing his own thing, but love was pulling them together. But their life was pulling them in sort of like what looked like a different direction. And for me, one of the things that I saw, if I was to summarize it, it's like, every one of us must go through this journey where there's an intersection of our soul, your Christ self, your divine self, your God self, whatever you want to call it. And in life, sometimes we're going to go past that intersection. It's like, it's those moments when we catch ourselves and realize there's something about us. But maybe the fantasy, as it said, we're trying to sell fantasy here, will have you go in the wrong direction or a different direction rather than the wrong direction. And then something happens again and you come back to that intersection and this is where I want to be, but it's not comfortable. So for me, the movie was like these two people who were going through the intersection of their life, connecting with what is their own voice, their own desires to be more, to make a difference. And I loved it. I mean, for me, I'm the kind of person when I watch a movie once, that's it. I don't want to see it again. That's it. This one I can watch over and over because it's a life lesson. It's actually a life lesson in so many ways. The mother who, if you look at it in the surface, you can say she was a horrible mother, she had bad parenting skills, but she was trying to make their life better. And she supported her daughter to being where she is so that now she can actually say, you know what, I don't want the path that we've been on. There's a path that is laid down for me. And I sort of shook my head earlier when you said it's not a male movie, and I get it, I understand. But every man, every woman must come to a point in their life where they face themselves and ask themselves if they're happy, if they're fulfilled, if they loved, if they're with the love of their life, or maybe they had a bet and they end up with a woman now and they can't really say. But something about that, for me, it went to the core of what makes us human, and the struggle and the fight, and be willing to give it up. And then eventually they came together where Kaz was, well, without giving the movie away if they haven't seen it, where Kaz was able to face his fears to get to her. I just think, I mean, I came home start looking like, how come I didn't know it was out? How much money did it make? And there was some stuff on the website. I was going off. I'm saddened. I'm saddened. I'm saddened that people, and I understand it, but they see through the lens of black and white biracial, because it was so much more. It's that and more. And I just think, why do you limit this beautiful experience to, well, the lead role should have been shouldn't be biracial? I just thought, oh, I had to calm myself down. I was talking to my producer for my show. I said, okay, I need to calm down. But, you know, if anybody is listening now, watching now, go see it. It will touch your soul if you're open.
Well, thank you. And one of the things I've really loved is you know, just following social media, how many people have said that it's given them new relationship goals. And that's the coolest thing, because for me, you know, this film, I'm hoping just inspires us to love the right way and really teach some of the younger folks how to love the right way, because, again, their experiences are only what they're seeing in reality shows, which is really frightening. And again, we don't get images to aspire to. We're aspiring to what we see in music videos, reality shows, and romantic comedies. And so for me, it was so important to do a love story with people of color, so that we could all look up on the screen and be inspired by that love. And as you said, it was two people. I mean, it was a soul connection, and they had to build a relationship. It was not easy, and ultimately they could not come together till they both found themselves. So I love that is what people are picking up.
I think that one of the things that that resonated with me was that he was willing to give the relationship up because it wasn't right.
Yeah.
And really what it made me think of is how many times I have not given up the relationship when it wasn't right. And it was more of a self-reflection, like, oh, that's what was going wrong. Like if you don't start with the truth, there's nowhere we can end up, you know, because we have this principle in what we study spiritually that says that every error thought contains the seed of its own destruction. So that it may look, you may win for what appears to be a time, but if it's built on an error belief, if it's built on something that does not affirm fundamental truth, that ultimately it's going to implode. And it may implode inside of a week, it may implode inside of a year, it may implode inside of a decade, but it's going to implode because it's not built on truth. So you really don't have a foundation unless you're standing on truth. But that it just, you know, there's a whole lot of stuff happening right there for me. Something I want to talk about that you were talking about seeing yourself reflected on screen, and I have this, you know, theory about art, and art being the most important subject of anything, whether we're talking about medicine, science, you know, English, whatever, because the art reflects the people, but the art also has the responsibility of waking up the people, and that when civilizations have passed, the only thing you have left is the art to tell the story of who the people were. You know, the way that we know anything about the Greeks is because of the art. The way that we know anything about the Byzantines is because of the art. So what does it mean then if you are absent from the art? And what that means then to then put images on screen, meaning that this is the art form of our day, one of the art forms of our day. What responsibility do we have as artists to reflect our stories?
Oh, it is everything. It's definitely what drives me as an artist. You know, I'm going to pull out another quote that I use a lot.
I put out quotes every day, so go ahead.
But as an artist, what drives me is that anybody can portray reality, but an artist portrays what reality should be. And so that is what drives me and drives my work and drives Reggie's work as well. It's why, you know, for me, there's no N-word in this movie. And People can say, well, of course, Kaz probably in the privacy of his own home may use it, or you don't think he and his dad ever throw that word around. For me, no, these two characters don't do that. And just to continue to say that's what reality is, so you should put it in the script. No, this is what reality should be. Two men speaking respectfully to each other, respecting themselves enough not to use the N-word. So it's small things like that that influence the scripts. But also, yeah, art. People look back and judge whole civilizations on what they see. And if someone was to look back on us over the past 20 years in film, we are invisible. We are rarely shown. And if you look at the majority, it would be in comedic roles in comedic films. So that is really scary to me. And because we're invisible to the world, we're also invisible to each other.
Yes.
Again, all we're getting fed are negative images through media, through news, and we need something to counter that, and that is what film can do. It can change perception. It can change perception that we have of ourselves, but also the perception that the world has.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. There is. I've been teaching this class, and the class, so anybody knows, is a class on the 12 disciples. And I've been pulling artwork from history. So I've been using, Leonardo da Vinci's famous portrait of the Last Supper. But I also have a picture from an Ethiopian artist that shows a picture of these very Africanized disciples and picture of Jesus. And then there's a Japanese piece of art that I found. But what I find is that when people make art, they reflect themselves. And I don't know anybody who makes art that, when you look at a culture, that does not reflect itself. And so for us to not fight harder for our pictures, to make sure that our voice is out there, that it is, I almost feel like it speaks to some level of self-love and some level of self-worth, that I'm worth showing up on the screen. I'm worth showing up in the fine art. I'm worth showing up in the whatever the art form is, because my life matters.
Absolutely. No, our lives do matter, and it is, again, we do not control our images that are seen on the news, that are seen a lot of times on TV and on film, because there's so few of us in a position to be able to write and direct or produce. So that's a scary thing, not to be in control of your own image. So when we have the opportunity, I've been very open with the fight it took to get this film made. It took 4 years of writing and 2 years of getting turned down by everybody because it's a love story to people of color. And would I consider casting it another way? But it was a constant fight to maintain two people of color in the lead roles of this love story. And it was worth the fight, because if I had given in, then we would be seeing what we always see, which is either, it's so prevalent on TV right now, the lack of black men on TV especially. It's definitely a renaissance for black women in lead roles, but a majority of those women have a white person that they're in love with. For me, it was important to show a black man and a black woman loving each other, and that, for me as a writer-director, that is what I have control over, and that's why I fought so hard.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for everything that you guys went through to get this picture out.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask Gina, 4 years of writing and 2 years of making it, and I listened to one of your interviews, 29 Days to Make It.
Mm-hmm.
What kept you going? Especially, I watched the interview you did with Tavis Smiley, and you talked about the room where you were doing that with Google in the room, and how the room looked. And what kept you going and not give up?
Mm-hmm. Passion. Like, I saw the movie in my head every single day. It was so clear to me that it was a film. So that passion fueled me. And again, I'm not going to lie, there were days where the movie, it just felt dead, and how is it ever going to happen? but it's fall 7 times, stand up 8. You've got to, if you're passionate about it, it gets you up. And the other thing was Love and Basketball. I had the knowledge of Love and Basketball. That was a film that every single studio turned down as well. But I got it made. I realized you just need one yes. And so that kept me going. I just needed one yes. And it took a lot longer than I thought it was going to take, but I got that one yes.
Did you ever think of taking out the suicide and the domestic violence scene? Because those are conversations we don't like to have, or we say there's no answer, or people get triggered by those conversations. Did you have any issue with having that in the movie?
It was interesting. A couple studios, when they turned down the script and things, everyone loved the story and the writing, but a couple said that the suicide, having that in there, made the film feel small or too dark, and didn't think that an audience could come back from a character who was on the edge like that. But that was such a big part of why I wanted to write this that I couldn't let that go. It was part of the DNA of the project. So, again, just dealing with the issues that we deal with in the film, that's why I wanted to make it, to bring some depth to it, to talk about things that we don't normally talk about, and give this character, both characters really, these specific journeys to go through.
Yeah. I take kudos to you.
One of the things that I loved about the film too was this arc that the character goes through to find her authentic voice. And I alluded to this earlier when I said that, in our spiritual community, this is really what we talk about. That everything is about finding your true self. And we use the term the Christ, but that is specific to our community. Other people use other terms in other communities that are like ours. But it is this idea of getting to who you authentically are, that it is not the persona. And in fact, we make a distinction between individuality and personality. That personality is, this is Sherry, and she wears these types of clothes, and she puts on this kind of makeup, and she speaks in these kinds of terms, and she, wears this body in this lifetime. But your individuality is a life force. Your individuality is formless. Your individuality is the true you. And so it's almost like, is it Michelangelo looking at the stone and trying to let the angel out? It's the same thing, where you are looking at yourself and the persona, the culture that you've been brought up in, the society that you've been brought up in, and trying to figure out how to let the angel out. And I feel like you really kind of nail that in terms of her journey and her letting the angel out. That, trying to get to that authentic self. And there are many, layers along the way. And I thought you kind of documented that really well in terms of those layers where, the first is the suicide, but there was all of this kind of acting out and rejecting of the world that she was in, until finally it was just a flat out, I gotta go, and they check out and, go down to, Mexico. Can you talk a little bit about that, about finding your true self, and does any of this parallel your own personal experience as an artist?
I think so many of us, and I know definitely for me, your childhood, it dictates so much who you are, who you become, whether it's you becoming someone who rejects who you were pushed to be, or you're somebody that gives in and becomes that person you were pushed to be. For me, growing up and the struggles that I went through, no doubt have made me the person I am. It was negativity that fueled me. I wish that wasn't the case, but I think it has made me stronger. But it's so much of, as you get older and trying to figure out who you are and break free from who you were molded to be or who you thought you were supposed to be. And figuring out who you are for yourself, and that's about finding your own voice. And for me as an artist, it was everything to discover my voice, and I've only come to realize, I think on this last film, if I was to say what is a connective tissue of all my work, I think it's women especially finding their self-worth, and though that trickles down to my other characters, it is about women finding their self-worth, and that's something, as I've mentioned before, that I've struggled with. So, finding your voice. I'm an artist, but I think everyone, no matter who you are, you have to know what your authentic voice is, and you need to be heard. That is not to have a voice and not to be heard is something that I think crushes a lot of us, especially a lot of women. And so for me, it was being able to be brave enough to write what I wanted to write, and I think, again, hopefully it inspires others, no matter, as I said, no matter what your walk of life, to have a voice and be heard.
Cool. I'm going to open it up to you guys, Ade and Shakira, if you have any other questions.
Yeah, the part about where Noni took off her extensions, what made you not necessarily drag it, but you really put a lot of focus on it? I mean, it's had a powerful impact because it had me look at, especially in the culture we live in, where people always going between natural and on Facebook, and there's all these groups. I love a natural woman, and I don't do. So there's this battle within people of color about their hair, but it's almost like you slow that down, and it was like there was a quiet narration about her taking a weave and said, I wonder what he's going to think. And then she stood there like, here I am, authentic. Will you take me? Will you say I do? And he looked and kissed her, and I thought that was just beautiful. I mean, it was such a powerful message that, you can miss it, but it was so powerful, like she was revealing herself. Can you tell us about what made you really put an emphasis on that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when we first meet Noni, she's 10 years old. She's in a salon that her mother's brought her to because the way that she is and her natural hair needs to be fixed. That is what she's being told and taught at that early age, that the way that she is not good enough and has to be fixed. And so that's what she's grown up with. And when we cut to her 15 years later, and she's Noni, like, we don't see any semblance of that little girl anymore. That girl has been lost and covered with armor, with the hair, the nails, the heels, the lashes, the makeup. She is gone. And what I love about that moment is that it is Noni being able to look in the mirror, shed all that armor, see herself again, and this time love her reflection like she was not able to do when she was a little girl. So I think that is what is fueling the emotion that people feel when they watch that, because you're seeing a woman like accepting the little girl who was so lost. And Kaz's reaction to it, she is standing there, and the audience and Noni doesn't know, like, is he going to laugh? Is he going to run?
Right.
But he just looks at her and accepts her and kisses her hair. It's just such a release for Noni and for the audience, and I really do love that moment.
Why did you set it up in a way where he kissed the hair rather than saying, I like it? Oh, what you did is more powerful, but why did you go for that?
Because as a writer, as I'm learning more and more, it's more powerful to see something than to talk about it. Yes. And that said, him kissing her hair is saying, I love you and accept you. He didn't need to say it. His actions showed it.
It was awesome. Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, that for sure is probably my favorite scene in the film. It's subversive. It's absolutely subversive. And, maybe there's a slight parallel with a scene that I think I saw recently in, How to Get Away with Murder, but it's such but that was even a different kind of thing. It wasn't about the beauty of the scene. It was like this kind of raw, they were showing something different. This was just this acknowledgement of beauty that was so wonderful and delightful and completely caught me off guard. And because I didn't see it coming. I didn't see it coming at all, and it was unexpected. I didn't expect the emotion that it produced in me. That and it's like, I don't even have a weave, and it's it's like waking up all of this stuff in me, and so that was just that moment was just fire.
Thank you. And the thing is, what's important is that it's not a comment on. I mean, some people wear weaves and are very happy with it.
Right.
My point was that Noni needed to be authentic to
Right.
herself. You know, it's interesting. People have asked me, I really want to rock the purple hair after seeing the movie, and you know, that's okay if that is what you want to do. The issue with Noni is that she had no agency in who she was at all. In the way that she looked, the way that she behaved, the songs that she sang. So for her to shed all that was important for her, but for me, the message is just be authentic to who you are.
Yeah. For me, it was a powerful kind of like get naked. That was what was happening. Like she just was getting naked, just getting raw and open. And throughout that whole trip, what I enjoyed was how he held the space without much dialogue. He held the space for her transformation, and you know, you the viewer, you're feeling that, you're going through it, but there's not that much dialogue that's taking place, and that was powerful. I really like how that was done.
Well, thank you. It's interesting too because if from the moment we get into them on the beach, there's zero dialogue all the way
Yeah.
through until they're at in the market. And it's interesting because in the original script and in the original cut, in the middle of that whole sequence, there's a scene of them in bed and they're talking. And they're talking about their childhoods, and Noni is talking about how when she got a nose job and why she has the weave, and Kaz was talking about his childhood and his mother leaving, and you know, I loved the dialogue and the connection between the two, but it was really interesting because Reggie, husband and producer, and also Stephanie, another producer, they were saying you don't need it. And I was arguing first because the writer was arguing with the director, which you know was schizophrenic. That you know, but it's great dialogue and this and that, but they were saying you don't need it, and it took me a moment to realize this is so much more powerful. This is where they're falling in love, and why not let an audience experience it? And I love what you said about the fact that Kaz giving her space to transform. And that's what I think the silence did and really emphasized. Right. So grateful for that note. And it took me a minute to let go of my dialogue, but it made it more powerful.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's
awesome.
definitely, you know, I know anybody, I mean, young people, adults, and there's so much in there, and it speaks to how to cultivate harmonious relationships. You know, because sometimes if you're looking for somebody to complete you, that causes a problem. They weren't looking for somebody to complete them. They were trying to complete themselves. And then coming together was to really complement what was already there. And, you know, one of the parts that moved me was when I thought she walked to the house when I think he was going to get vetted. And it was getting in a car, and she walked. I thought, oh, she walked? What did she walk from? But then I saw the car. I'm guessing because it was happening in my head. I'm like, oh my God, she was really. The fact that he was willing to let her go, I was like, dude, really? Come on. I'm thinking the car's gonna stop. No, it didn't. Yeah, that got me. It's like, ooh, this brother's rough. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I was like, oh. But what he said, as you mentioned earlier, that because the whole thing started off in a lie, it was like, wow, talk about integrity. Integrity. And you got to have your own values or else. Whew, that just...
Yeah, no, that's what I said. I thought that moment was very powerful because I mean, again, you know, you see yourself reflected in the art, and so it made me look back at myself, and it was like, how many times did you not let the car drive away? Meaning metaphorically. And you know, and it was like, oh my God, I gotta have a come to Jesus moment about the fact that I don't let the car drive away. Let it go, because again, if it's built on an error thought, it cannot last. It flat out cannot last. It's going to implode. Now the question is, do you want to be part of the implosion, or do you want to take a proactive stance and let it move on out of the space? one of the things that I've been studying, I do this little thing called the Love Chronicles, and I study love. And I thought that one of the things that happens with just soulmate love, and this is coming from my studies, is the fact that people come together to help each other work out their own stuff. To like, it's as if the person that you've drawn to you is there to help you work out the things that are yours to work out, and that somehow we find each other because you know the exact button to push to help me get my stuff out, and I know the exact button for you to push to help you get your stuff out. Did you have an idea of them as soulmates? Did you think of them in those terms?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But the balcony was the moment of the movie. If the balcony scene didn't work, the film wasn't going to work. And what the balcony was two people seeing into each other's soul. And they were able to do that because they caught each other, really, Noni, at the brink of death, at the worst moment of her life, when she has completely shed the persona, shed the fantasy that she's given to the world. It is just her in that life and death moment. He sees through her and sees the real her. And in that moment, she looks up and sees him. They see into each other's souls. And that is something that Gugu, Nate, and I talked about a lot, about it was souls connecting in that moment. And so for me, it was what connected them despite their completely different circumstances, and what continued to connect them even when they split off. And he walked away because of, the fact that he had to lie, and her walking away because it made no sense to go there. Her mother would never allow that. But they kept reflecting on each other and watching each other and keeping an eye on each other and being drawn to each other because they had that soul connection. And that's really what kept them together through all of the obstacles that kept getting put in their way.
Interesting. Sorry, Sharon, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go right ahead.
I thought it was interesting that his suicide thing happened earlier in the show, because, it's been part of the trailer, so I'm thinking, well, maybe later on. And when it happened earlier, I'm like, this is going to take the fun out of it. But, because it's like, I already know that's going to happen. But what you said is that created a moment of connection. And what I see is with people in our lives, it's sometimes during time when they're vulnerable, when they're in pain, crisis, that we get to see ourselves beyond the BS that we create. And in that moment, there was a connection, but then the external makeup, if you will, was getting in the way. But when you make a connection with somebody, and as you said earlier, Sherry, it's like, the whole idea of soulmates. I think people generally have this idea, the person's going to come into my life and just make me so perfect. Not. A true soulmate will come in your life and turn it upside down so you can see yourself. And I love that connection that you created at the beginning and how that was always there. So no matter what was going on, we still were able to see there is a connection, and they couldn't even break away from it. That was just pulling them together. It really forced them to deal with their stuff and be true to themselves. And so when they did come together, it was because they both wanted to come together, not because they're trying to fill a void.
No, absolutely. And the thing that she says later on, which, was so important to her, that he saw the good in her, and it was enough to keep her going till she could see it in herself. And that was really so much of that soul connection and what kept her going until, as she said, that she could find a reason to live and find good in her and what was worth living for.
Gina, thank you for this. This has been wonderful. One of the reasons that I wanted to do this is that for me, we chose this film for my church to screen. And we have a group, and we do what's called Metaphysical Movie Night, and we chose Beyond the Lights as our November movie. And we felt like there were so many important spiritual messages. And then the reason I wanted to do this conversation tonight is that I really want spiritual communities to embrace this film and to know that this is a film that they can embrace. And so I wanted to talk about some of the themes that I felt were so relevant that are things that, like I think I had said this in a conversation with Reggie, the stuff that you put in the film is the stuff that we talk about in our classes. This is the stuff that we talk about from the pulpit, about finding your authentic self, about, you know, releasing your inner self. That there's a poem, for a part of a poem from Robert Browning, where he talks about the imprisoned splendor, and the name of the poem is Paracelsus, and that, you know, that there is this imprisoned splendor that lies within each one of us, and that it is hemmed in by the gross flesh, and it's like wall upon wall of gross flesh hems it in, but it's not about trying to get an entry point in where you're trying to let the light in, but rather you're trying to let the light out. And so your whole work of your life is in releasing this imprisoned splendor so that you can become your higher self. And I'm going to put this kind of in the hands of Ade and Shakira, is that why do spiritual communities need to go and see this film? What will they get? What will they gain from it?
So two things. One, I'll say that, and then I have a question from a friend of mine, my producer on my show as well. She's trying to ask the question. She said, please ask this question for me. So what I would say is, I don't know if you spoke to her earlier. Sometimes generally it's easy to go to a church, a spiritual center, to listen to the conversation and take it in and go, yeah, that really touched my soul. And when you go out in the world, it's easy to forget what we heard in the class, what we learned from the pulpit. And as you said earlier, Sherry, art has a way of piercing straight to the soul. And for me, it will definitely put the flesh on the bone, if you will. That people get to see it in the, what's the word I'm looking for, in the everyday world. Because sometimes we think spirituality is just some few people who are spiritual. Those other people are not spiritual. Life itself is spiritual. But the movie takes it beyond church and temple and centers. Like, this is just life. And I think spiritual centers, it would change people. And people might even say, oh, I got it now. Because this God thing, this divine thing sometimes seems so far off. Even though we say we recognize our connection, we have a relationship, intellectually we're like, I don't know, but I keep saying it till I believe it. For me, the movie brings it in so that you can really see that this is real. Human experience, God in action, love in action.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah, I concur. Shakira, I muted you just because there's some background noise. Let me unmute you. Uh-oh, did it unmute?
Nope.
Hold on.
Can I throw the question to Gina while you do that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So this is a question from Celeste. She said, hello, Sherry. Please, okay, so I'm just reading the question literally. Please talk to me, I guess to Gina. Please talk to me about Nina Simone being the focus in the Beyond the Lights. What would Nina say to these singers today? The answer feels like it has been given through Beyond the Lights. Share with me about freedom and Nina.
Wow. Well, Nina's a huge influence on me as a writer. I write to music. I create playlists for every script that I write, and there's a Nina song on every playlist. I knew early on in the writing process that this character, Noni, would sing a Nina song when she was a little girl. I just didn't know which one. So it was a matter of going through all the Nina CDs. And when I came across Blackbird, it was as if it was written for the movie. Yeah. It was so exciting as a writer to hear it and hear the lyrics. They just spoke so beautifully, hauntingly beautifully to the character and what she was going through. And it's interesting because it changed the trajectory of the script, because originally Noni in Mexico sings an original song that she wrote. But once I had that Nina song, it made sense that she went back to that. And I love that song was such an influence that it changed the trajectory. And why Nina Simone was so important is because Nina, she changed the game. She was so authentic in her lyrics, in her voice, in her persona. Yes, she made up her name, but she like she sang truth and bared her soul. And it seems that singers today are afraid to do that, to bare your soul. But that is what art should be, is an artist bearing the soul for the greater good. And that is really what Nina does and did. And in bearing her soul, it allows others to open up ourselves. And that is what Nina would implore the artists today to stop being so homogenized, be authentic, find your own voice, because that is what's going to make you special, and just sing truth.
Wonderful. Shakira, you're going to have to unmute yourself. I'm trying to, but I can't unmute you. So you just gotta hover over the little microphone at the top and unmute yourself. Yeah, that's awesome. That's really, really awesome. Thank you, Celeste, for that question. Shakira, you there?
I see the mute going.
I know. I'm so sorry. There was background noise. What can I do?
Okay, I think I'm
there. You are. Yes. Okay. So the question I was asking is that, why will this movie be great for spiritual communities to go as a group, to go tomorrow, Sunday, to go see the film?
Well, I think overall it's important for spiritual communities to go in because it speaks to the humanity. And that's what I like about the movie. It speaks to the humanity, the human side of us. And it's so good, I think, to have that visual of the actual transformation. And the movie Beyond the Light was very authentic in telling that story from top to bottom. And for me personally, and I know probably for Charles, it wasn't so much, although yes, it's a love movie and a love story between the two of them, but I can't stop talking about the mom. I can't stop talking about the dad, because for me, they had their moment. And when the mom sat on the floor and she heard her daughter singing through the phone, that was a moment that you could probably just start writing something about what was going on right there. But it's the humanity. It's the humanity to us that it really gives the integrity, finding your truth, the courage to live the truth that we're talking about in these spiritual communities. And how do we get to see what that looks like, but through these kind of movies? That's how we get to see what we're talking about, quote unquote. And so I think we should all go and see it. Yeah.
Well, thank you.
And I just want to add, Celeste said it's a Nina song that I don't know. Thank you. I loved your movie. Cried a lot. Thank you for creating it.
Please tell Celeste thank you so much for supporting it, and I'd love to hear that you loved it.
Wonderful. Well, this has been great. I'm interested in seeing more people seeing the film, and specifically the spiritual community seeing the film, because it's a transformative experience, and especially if you can get together afterwards and discuss it, because this is the kind of stuff that will come out where you get to talk about what it means to love someone, what it means to fight for someone, and what it means to let someone go when the relationship is not built on truth. Let the car drive away, Sherry. So I love this, and I thank you, and I send you blessings.
Go ahead. I want to ask, if a spiritual community center wants to show, what would they have to do? Is there a number, an email address? How would they go about contacting you?
If they wanted to, I'm sorry, Ade, I didn't hear the second part.
Then how would they be able to contact you? Because I'm here in Atlanta, and I go to Hillside International Truth Center, and I would definitely present the movie to them. And anybody else who's watching, really, how can we we want spiritual centers to show it in churches, so anybody who's open, but how would we to reach it?
To show the film, the best, well, I think you could reach out directly to me through Twitter so that I know, but we would have the studio would be able to send a link of the film to be shown, and that would be tremendous.
Got it. Okay.
At GPB Made It.
Okay, great. Oh, I see it right
Twitter.
here.
And as soon as I hear the request, then I can reach out to the studio to make it happen.
Okay.
So preferably, obviously, tomorrow we'd prefer everyone to go to the actual theater.
Right. Yes.
Go to
For
the
obvious
movie.
reasons. Go to
Buy
the
your
movies.
ticket.
Yeah.
Yes.
Tweet while you watch, or tweet after you
Tweet
watch.
after. Tweet after.
Tweet
Right.
afterwards. But
Go
talk
watch
about
it
it.
so you know what to say when you present it to the spiritual center. So,
Exactly.
Yes.
Don't say something 'cause you're looking down at the phone.
Yes. No, this is a movie that's worth talking about and to keep talking about. So thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. We had a lot of folks watching us on YouTube. Hey, guys. We didn't have any other questions come in, but I know that people are out there, and a couple things have come through on Facebook to let me know that people are watching. So thank you guys for tuning in for this. And this is awesome. Gina, we send you out, and we're sending you some love and some good vibrations. And we have every expectation that this film is going to continue to be talked about and continue to perform well for you.
Yeah, and I'm grateful to you guys for coming out tonight and to discuss this because, again, I love to entertain, but more than that, I want to say something to the world, and it means everything as an artist that you guys are receiving the message, and so much so that you want to be on this journey and fight for this film and give it a life. So sincerely appreciative.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So
Thank you.
Good night, the gift and we're giving it back.
Right. Good night, everybody.
Good
Night. Thank you.
Bye-bye.